Hi, I'm Reuven Cohen, co-founder of CoinLaunch. Today I'll be walking you through the different steps of the CoinCreator application. Before I do, I'd like to take a moment to explain some of the key capabilities and how it works in a little bit more detail. When you go to the CoinCreator page, the first thing you'll see is a pop-up window, and this encourages you to do a few things. One, install the MetaMask extension. The MetaMask extension is a wallet for Ethereum. It allows you to actually deploy your application or dApps, distributed applications, on top of the Ethereum network. If you're using Chrome, Firefox, Edge, or Opera, you can go and download the extension at this time. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do when you create your initial coin offering contract is you're going to want to switch from the Ethereum LiveNet to the Ethereum testnet. This is important. On the LiveNet, you're using real Ethereum, and this has real value. When you go to the testnet, it's test. It's fake. You can get as much test ether as you want from the Rinkeby faucet. We would highly recommend you switch to the Rinkeby testnet before doing any initial deployments. Once you're comfortable, you can switch back to the LiveNet. A couple things to keep in mind. When you switch networks or blockchains, it's important to restart your browser just to clear any previous settings from your cache. Okay, now that you've switched from the LiveNet or mainnet to the testnet, you're ready to set up your first initial coin offering. You'll see a few different options right off the bat. The first option is apply token only contract. And the token only contract is an option that allows you to skip the crowd sale itself. This is useful if you're looking to issue things that may not need to have a structured sale attached to it, such as an event ticket or coupons, incentives, or even potentially certain kinds of securities. If you are issuing a direct security, make sure to have the appropriate legal and accounting representation that matches the jurisdiction in which this will be offered, specifically to those buying it. Again, I cannot say this enough. Make sure you have a good lawyer in place. Then the next thing you're going to see, in this case, I'm not going to do a actual token only contract, so I'm going to click that off, and then I'm going to set the actual coin or token name to test. This is again sort of a broad description of the actual token. And the next, and this is probably more important, is the actual symbol. And I'm going to call this test as well. This is not unique, meaning multiple people can have multiple names that are exactly the same. So the name will be registered on the Ethereum blockchain, but there could literally be a million other tokens with the name test. The only way to get an actual sort of unique verifier or name for that actual symbol would be with various exchanges. Version number allows you to keep track of which version of the actual token you're creating. This is particularly useful when you're doing deployments on the testnet. I would suggest doing many deployments on the testnet to test your campaign before you go to the mainnet. Go through the entire process, fund it, finalize it, see how it works, and make sure you understand the process before you go and spend actual ether on the mainnet. Initial supply, this is the amount of tokens that you're creating. This is similar to, let's say, the overall float for an IPO. How many tokens may exist. So some of those tokens will be sold. Some of those tokens may go to you. It's the allotment. And if not all the tokens are actually bought, then the unsold tokens will be burnt, meaning they're deleted, they're gone forever. So if you want to have a sort of allotment to yourself, in the next tab you'll see an option for that. And then decimal points. Decimal points is the amount of that the actual token can be sort of cut up and made available. If you look at Bitcoin, I think the number is 9 decimal points. Certain applications may need more, and others may need less. This is essentially the 0.000000 kind of option that you'd have in making your tokens available to be purchased or traded. So you could trade 1/18th of a token kind of offering. So it's an important number. Okay, now we get to the exciting part. This is where you actually set up your ICO contract. This is the heart of the actual crowd sale campaign. The components you have here really define the terms and conditions of your crowd sale. So it's important that you spend a lot of time sort of thinking through these parts. So the fields here are pretty self-evident, but I'm going to walk you through. The first is a critical one. This is the address in which the successful funds will be deposited. This is when the terms of the actual ICO are met, when you meet the minimum contributions or maximum contributions in time, where the funds get to go. this is your wallet address. Make sure that you put the correct number in here, and an address, and test it several times. You can grab that from your MetaMask wallet address or any multi-sig type address. The token for team. Token for team is the carve out. This is the tokens that you make available for yourself or people involved in the actual crowd sale who are not directly funding the crowd sale. This is important. So if you're allocating 33% of your tokens to be sold and you want to keep the other components and available to you, then you need to make sure that you set the right number in here. The minimum contribution in terms of the pre-sale. This is the amount that you are selling, or the minimum amount you're selling your tokens for during the pre-sale. So what you're saying is basically, what's the minimum contribution you'll accept during that phase of the crowd sale. So generally speaking, you probably want to set a higher number for the earlier sort of participants, because they're probably going to have a higher bonus structure associated with that, which I'll show here in a minute. Then the next is the main sale. So once you go from a private sale to a main sale, you probably want to have a different number yet again. This is going to be a broader market offering, and you probably want to lower that number. So having the number defined is pretty important. The max contribution in Ether. This number is also pretty important in terms of having a kind of one size fits all, or you might want to have, or limit the ability to have one user sort of dominate your entire offering. So rather than having one buyer take the entire offering, you could say that no one backer or buyer has the ability to have more than a certain amount of Ether. So it's important to set that number as well. The max cap. The max cap, it can be a little bit confusing. So the max cap is not set in Ether, it's set in tokens. So the max and minimum cap essentially are the amount of tokens you're looking to sell. So the token value is multiplied by the max cap. So if you're selling a token for 1 Ether and you set 100 tokens, then you're looking to raise 100 Ether. So it's important to understand that the value of that token is directly correlated to the maximum and minimum caps. So the minimum cap is the minimum amount of tokens you're looking to sell that you would deem a successful campaign. So you want to set that number to something less than 0, but something not too high that says that if you raise 4 million Ether, and the minimum cap was 5 million, the project would fail and the proceeds would be returned. So you want to have that number something realistic. So something higher than 0 and something less than the max. The token price. This is the price of the actual token itself. So for example, if you set the token price to 1 and you sent 1 Ether, you'd get 1 token. If you set the price to 0.1 and you sent 1 Ether, you get 10, and so on. So that's the price of which the token will be made available. And lastly, the duration. The duration is also pretty important. It's particularly important if you don't hit the max cap. So if you hit the minimum cap and you set your campaign duration to 365 days and you're happy with the minimum cap, you have to wait 365 days until you would be able to finalize your actual campaign. So if time is of the essence, or minimum or maximum cap are important, you want to find a balance between the two. You probably don't want to set something that's 365 days, but you also probably don't want to set something that's set to 14 days. So you probably want something generally in the ballpark of probably 30 to 90 days as a sort of campaign duration. So in the worst case scenario, you hit your minimum cap and you're waiting 90 days before you can finalize the actual campaign itself. The other thing to keep in mind, the duration in terms of days is an estimation based on block numbers, meaning you have to actually meet the block number, not the specific date or time. The date and time, again, is estimated by the system, but you cannot finalize until the block in Ethereum has passed. So there's an option you'll see under the management tool and in another step here, which will show you where to find that information. The bonus section defines the incentives for early backers of your crowd sale. It's broken into various periods which are based on time. So if you roll over, you'll see the amount of time for the first periods. In this example is 24 hours. The second period is 48 hours, and the third period is 72 hours. A bonus is a percentage of the amount of purchased tokens. So if a user buys 100 tokens and the bonus is 50%, the user gets 150 tokens. So you'll see that there's a 50% bonus. The second bonus here is set to 30. The third is set to 20. We also have a pre-sale bonus. So during the pre-sale phase of a project, you can define a larger bonus structure. In this case, they would have a 75% bonus. So if they bought 100 tokens, they'd get 75 additional. So they have 175 tokens. The vesting section is the section that determines when and how the tokens are made available to your backers. It's broken into 3 basic parts. But before I go into that, let me give you a little bit of background on what the vesting section does and why we have it. One of the challenges of the early ICO projects was the fact that a lot of the early backers of ICO projects typically got a very large incentive or discount on the actual tokens that they were given, which when the ICOs became publicly tradable on various exchanges meant that a lot of the early backers were the first to actually sell their holdings, which created a downward pressure on the token price. The vesting creates a capability that allows the actual early backers a mechanism to not exit their position immediately. You have 3 options for configuring your vesting components, starting with the vesting duration. The vesting duration is the amount of time in which your vesting will take place. It's defined in hours. In this example, I've defined 730 hours, which is roughly a month. The vesting cliff is a time after your vesting begins that the vesting will actually take place. So there's a cliff, there's a sort of period of time that a user has to wait. This is a month as well. So in this case, between the duration and the cliff, it would take 2 months for the entire vesting schedule to complete. And the last option is when the vesting will actually start based on a date. In this case, we've selected March the 23rd. So the cliff would be 1 month after March 23rd. So the vesting would start April 23rd and it would complete on May 23rd. Okay, the final tab is the summary tab. At this point, we're almost ready to go and take a look and deploy the actual ICO contract. Before you do, you might want to take a quick look and make sure all the fields are correct and the way you like it. The one thing to remember before you deploy an actual contract is it's atomic. It means once you've deployed it, it doesn't change. It is what it is forever. Okay, now that you've clicked the contract tab, you'll be presented with a variety of functions relating to the deployment and management of the actual crowd sale contract. Before you can actually deploy, you have to, well, read a bunch of this legal stuff. So read through it. I would suggest you actually read through it so you understand what you're agreeing to. And once you've read through it, the deploy option will become available. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to deploy. If you require whitelisting, which is the ability for certain users to only have access to the contract, then you'll make sure you want to include that capability by clicking it on. Otherwise, click deploy. So the first thing that happens is a contract gets compiled. So if you understand the way Ethereum network works, it takes something called a Solidity contract and then provides the ability to actually deploy it against the Ethereum mainnet. In this case, we've selected the Rinkeby testnet. Again, make sure when you're first starting out to use the testnet. It doesn't cost anything to deploy. You can get test ether by clicking on the get test ether button in the main interface itself. I've already done that, so I've got some ether. I've got about 96 ether in my account, so I'm going to submit it. You'll see that the gas limit is set to 300,000. The gas price is set to 20, and now I can submit the first contract. So I submit that, and what that does is deploys the actual contract. So the next thing that happens is you're going to wait for a mine block to return the actual contract itself. So what this is doing is essentially sending the contract to the Ethereum network, or Ethereum blockchain, and then waiting for miners to respond and say, yes, it has completed successfully. So this process, depending on the time of day and whether or not it's going to either the actual testnet or the mainnet, can take anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes. Now that the actual second part of the deployment has completed, I'm going to submit the actual crowd sale and token contract. So this is the token contract. The first part was the actual crowd sale contract. And then again, similar to the first one, it'll you have to wait for the actual block to return and say that the contract has been successfully deployed to the Ethereum network. Again, this can take anywhere generally between 90 seconds to about 2 minutes. If for this process doesn't work and you're waiting, let's say, 10 minutes, it means that you have to restart your browser. There is a bug in the MetaMask wallet. It's a bug that we're working to fix, but currently if it takes more than, let's say, about 3 to 5 minutes, it's never going to end. So you can kind of get a feel for how long it's taking by watching this video. It doesn't take that long. It takes a little while, but not too long. So I'm submitting. And now the final stage here is the actual deployment of the combined contract. So there's two contracts. There's a crowd sale contract and there's a token contract. The final contract is the actual combination of the two, at which point the combined contract will provide the actual crowd sale contract that you give your end funders or buyers of the actual ICO itself. You will be presented with that at the very end here. I can just give you a quick, we'll wait for the result and you'll be able to see it. Okay, we've successfully completed the ICO deployment, your first ICO. So you'll see a contract address here. This is the address you give. Again, if you've deployed on the testnet, it's only going to be functional on the testnet. If you deploy this on the mainnet, then you can use this address to actually do a live ICO with real Ether. Okay, now that you've started the crowd sale, you have the ability to actually create a whitelist. You do the whitelist that allows certain users to actually have access to actually fund your project itself. So if you want to limit who has access, then you can add their wallet address into the whitelist. So oftentimes that is done by having a form on your website that you use as a base of accreditation. That accreditation could be based on where they're coming from. It could be a certain city, a certain province or state, a certain country. And based on that, they have the ability to actually fund your project. When you deploy, make sure you choose the option, the checkbox to actually allow this to happen. So you can check if someone already is whitelisted, you can remove them if they already are and you no longer want them, or you can add them. Okay, so you've deployed your first functioning crowd sale contract to the Ethereum network. The next step is to actually start your contract. So you close the window, go back to the contract tab, and then rather than deploying, you're going to choose to start it. Click Start. Like all Ethereum-based transaction, you're going to pay some gas to actually deploy it. So make sure you have enough gas and click Submit. At which point you're going to see another blockchain process. This is going to execute a start contract function within the contract.
All right.
This should again take probably around 90 seconds.
The contract has been
Possibly
deployed.
a little bit
Your
longer
main sale has
depending on
started.
the amount of activity and the amount of gas you give. Keep in mind the amount of gas you give actually controls the speed in which the transaction will occur. The more gas, the faster it happens. The less gas, the slower it happens. If you don't put enough gas, it may not happen at all. So that number is actually quite important. If you read our user manual, you can see more details on sort of what the optimal numbers are for that. But generally speaking, those numbers are actually going to be defined in the function call itself, so you can just use the defaults and they should work. So at this point, the ICO contract has started. Now we not only do we have a live contract, we have a functioning one. So you cannot engage. People cannot send money to that contract or engage with that contract until you've actually started the ICO. It's important to do this. If you don't do this, people can't send money to it, and if they do send money to it, it's going nowhere. Make sure to start it. Okay, you see some other functions here as well. So we've just started the ICO itself, but we've also got the ability to stop it. You may want to stop the contract for a number of reasons. Maybe the contract isn't ready, maybe you're not ready, maybe you need to do more marketing, less marketing, hire a better lawyer, hire a lawyer. Any number of reasons you might want to start or stop it. You can resume it once you've gone from a sort of pre-sale. So the first stage of a contract is a pre-sale. This is the terms that are set as this first step. You want to go to a main sale. So the next step is to choose that. So you're going to click the start main sale, and then again you're going to pay some gas to start that part of it. So that transitions from a pre-sale to a main sale. So let's start that. So we'll submit that. And then we're going to verify the contract. Again, this takes about 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, and Once you've done that, the process of the contract moves from, again, pre to main. Okay, now that your main sale has started, you can actually check on the status of your sale itself. So by clicking on the Return ICO Status link, you'll see a field, and it tells you some information in regards to your status. The beginning block, this is when it was actually deployed. Your ending block, this is the end of the duration of your actual offer, and this basically tells the time frame which your offer is made available. Start date, which was today. End date, which is roughly, I think it was 730 hours, so about a couple weeks. And number of backers. Well, I just started this as a demo, but if you actually sent Ether to it, you'd see number of backers, how much you received, minimum max, and various other related components, tokens that are available, if it's a public or private sale, whether it's closed or not. So now let's just assume for a moment that we've received all the funds that we want to get, the time frame has passed, and we're ready to finalize the sale. Again, you need to meet the conditions of your actual sale. So a couple things have to happen. The time has to have elapsed. If you set a 6-month cycle and we want to finalize it 1 month in, it's not going to work. If you've set a minimum amount of capital and you haven't met that minimum amount, it's not going to work. So make sure you've met the primary objectives and settings for your contract before you attempt to finalize it. Once you are ready to finalize it, really all you need to do, assuming that those criteria have been met, you click the Finalize button. And the Finalize button essentially will send a signal back to the contract and tell you to actually send it. You'll notice that there's a transaction error. Well, the transaction error is happening because we haven't met the criteria yet for the actual completion of the project. I literally just created it 5 minutes ago and haven't sent any actual Ether to it, and the time hasn't elapsed, so I can't actually do it yet. But assuming that all those things have met, you will be able to just basically submit it. Now that you've finalized your contract, the crowd sale is over. A couple things would have happened. You can check your Ether wallet, and you should see the actual contributions that were sent to your crowd sale contract now in your wallet. So you now have the ability to transfer that to any other wallet or spend it and do whatever you please with your actual Ether. The other thing you can do is actually enable the vesting capabilities. So the vesting capabilities, again, allows for the capability of tokens to be given and allocated based on the vesting schedule. The easiest solution, if your users want to actually collect their tokens, is to send them to this page and tell them to put in their address and allocate the actual tokens. So putting in your wallet address here and then claim, or just clicking claim vested amount. Actually, based on MetaMask, you shouldn't have to even put your wallet address in. You just should be able to click this claim vested amount and you should be able to claim them. You can check if you have any vested tokens available by clicking this as well, and that'll return a response asking and seeing if you've got anything available. In this case, you have 0 tokens available for withdrawal, so I don't currently have any. If I did, I could actually claim them. You can check all claimed tokens and check vesting schedules. You can allocate if there's a carve out, send them to a particular user, and allocate non-vestable tokens. So you've got a variety of functions here. This is how you actually manage the tokens after the completion of a project. You'll also want to send your end buyers to this page. This page can actually be embedded within your own website. And one of the things a lot of our users do is they actually send their users and tell them to check the vesting schedule and make the claims themselves. So if you click check vesting schedule, you will be presented with an interface that tells you when the vesting schedule will occur and how long it'll take to last. So you'll see that the cliff and when vesting begins and so forth. And that will allow your users to actually make their claims based on when they become available within the system. You also have the ability to manage existing ICO contracts, multiple ICO contracts. You can transfer tokens to certain users. So let's say you have, again, a carve-out. If you've allocated a substantial amount of tokens to yourself and you want to give those tokens directly to certain users, you can put their wallet address in here and select the amount that you'd like to transfer. You can also select previously loaded contracts. If you've registered with the system and are logged in, you can load previous contracts. You can also choose the contract by address if it isn't previously in the system. And then you can contribute to other ICOs on the platform directly from this interface as well by putting in the contract address and clicking contribute. Okay, Next is managing multiple smart contracts. If you register for this site, you'll have a dashboard available to you that gives you additional capabilities. The primary capability are the ability to manage more than one contract, as well as things such as KYC and campaigns. So I'll start with showing you the actual multiple contract option. So if you go to dashboard and choose manage contracts, you'll be presented with an interface that allows you to see the various contracts you've deployed and what network they've been deployed on. You'll see things like the Ropsten network. You'll see other ones. If it's on the mainnet, you'll see www and so on. The vast majority of the deployments I've done recently are on the testnet, so you see that they're on the Ropsten. You'll also see that I've done different types of deployments. I've done an exchange token, which allows you to facilitate the transfer of tokens based on Ethereum sent to an exchange contract. You'll see a token-only deployment, which allows you to create just the token, kind of a central bank of sorts, where you can issue your direct token as a currency or event tickets, or direct facilitation. And then you'll see ICO. For ICO, you can actually manage the process once deployed. So if you click Manage, you'll see there's a widget that shows up and gives you some additional capabilities. So you've got the ability to see starting and ending blocks. I haven't started this ICO, so these are all currently at 0. But if I want to actually start the ICO, I could choose to start it. If I wanted to go from a pre-sale to a main sale, I could do that. I could stop it if I needed to, or restart it, and ultimately I could finalize it. Keeping in mind, when you finalize, you need to make sure that the various terms of the crowd sale contract are met, such as the amount of contribution to it, as well as the time frame. Tokens, you can actually allocate tokens after the completion of the crowd sale itself. So if you want to send tokens to different backers, or you want to keep some for yourself, this is where you can allocate that. And if you're actually looking to validate or verify your contract based on an audit, you can go to export and choose to export both parts of the contract. So you can export the ICO contract or the token contract, and you can click enable. This is this can be done after the deployment of the actual ICO. Well, thank you for watching the introduction to the CoinLaunch CoinCreator. That wraps up our presentation today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can always get a hold of us by clicking the chat icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the interface. This allows you to get in touch with any of the developers, myself, Ruv, my partner Randy, and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible, or hopefully in real time. If you have any suggestions for how we can make this platform better, easier to use, or just want to work with us, feel free to reach out. We're always available. Thank you again.